So we're here today with Darren Douthitt, the superintendent of Anniston City Schools. Mr. Douthitt, we'll go ahead and cut to it because I know you're a busy man. How would a specialist maintain an integrated curriculum, both horizontally and vertically aligned, that engages all students in rigorous and relevant academic challenges?
Well, that process involves a team of people. Ordinarily, you have a curriculum specialist that's guiding a project that involves curriculum and the various subject areas. And the team of people ensures the alignment of all of the curriculum across grade levels for each subject area. It's a fluid, perpetual process that must go on. And again, it involves managing that curriculum every day of the school year.
Okay, and how would an instructional specialist lead and motivate teachers to adhere to the prescribed state standards?
Well, it involves seeking training that allows us to get outside the box and see what others are doing. For instance, if we have the same textbook adoption, going to some other system and seeing looking at some of the resources they use to invigorate the classroom. All of those things are important to ensuring that the teachers are providing what's needed to the students.
Okay.
So everyone, it involves PD for everyone, the teachers, the curriculum specialists, everyone involved, so that everyone's knowledgeable of what should be going on.
Kind of like what we're doing with A+.
That's right. That's a great example. A+ College Ready leaves nothing to guesswork. I've been to some of the training. We even have bookkeepers that have gone to the training to handle the financial end. So everything about the process is laid out before the people who are involved. And I think it's some of the most robust PD that you can get. And that's what everything about curriculum should entail, is an opportunity for everyone to get not just a scratch the surface view of what's going on, a very in-depth understanding, and then again, it entails people leaning on each other in terms of speaking to a teacher who might know a little more than you know to get a better understanding of how to make a lesson work. That co-teaching approach is very important in times like these.
Yes, I know from personal experience doing the A+ College Ready to the full validity has proven on test scores not only to improve the kids' testing scores, but to improve them as an individual.
Yeah.
I watched one student gain 600 points on a scaled score.
Sure. But just as I mentioned, we're in cohort 11 for A+ College Ready. That means if you go back to maybe cohort 1 or 2 or 3 even, and you go and you take a look at what's going on in classrooms for those particular school systems, you can imagine that you're going to find some very rich classroom environments that are doing things on a level well above what we might be doing, and that's a good way to gain knowledge of what can go on in a classroom using A+ College Ready.
Oh, that's awesome. So how would a specialist monitor and assess those instructional programs, activities, and materials?
That's a very meticulous process. It involves being in the classroom, paying attention to what's going on, and it can't happen with just that one individual. That's where the PD comes in for administrators and even, again, teachers as leaders in the school. There's nothing wrong with peer monitoring. That means a peer walking in to see what you're doing, plus or minus, or positive or negative, to kind of get an understanding of what to do and what not to do. But that, again, is a perpetual process. People always paying attention, people always noticing the various pieces associated with the classroom lesson.
An ongoing continuous improvement.
That's pretty much the way it works.
Okay, so how would the specialists in the past use diagnostic tools to assess, identify, and support instructional improvement?
Well, the benchmarking that principals in schools do is how that goes on from the from a global level. However, the teacher-made test is also important to improvements in the classroom. A lot of teachers lean on the test made by the textbook adoption, and that could be faulty in a sense, because we know that we have to test students on what is taught, and the only way to truly get 100% authenticity is to have a teacher-made test, and you can use some of the test items from the textbook company or from whatever manual you might be using. But again, we got to ensure that what's being tested is what's been taught, and there's a cyclic process that involves the assessment piece as well. So between the teacher-made test, the benchmarking, and other opportunities for assessment, it's a process that is very involving, and everyone has to pay attention. I mean, my test and measurements class put this on my mind in a way that made me understand that if the test is not valid or reliable, then you're wasting time. And so it really involves someone taking time to really, or the teacher, I should say, taking time to really understand every test item and ensuring that that test item is relevant for, or it is fodder for assessment, rather.
And see, I'm using Scantron, the database based off of each standard for my math class. And then when I make the test, I put on there as a section header what standard that is covering.
Sure.
And so then I give the children 5 questions.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
a 4 out of 5, then I know that I covered that well.
That's right.
You know, a 3 out of 5, then maybe I need to go back and revisit that with that child. Anything less than that, then we need to do some small group.
And that's the mark of a good teacher: testing, and teaching, and then reassessing the students based upon the results from that test. You can tell as quick as you give a test and grade it, you can tell whether you've done a good job of teaching that particular standard. The students can help you with that understanding as well, because you'll hear a lot of them say, we didn't cover that, or I don't have a good understanding of this. Especially your high-performing students, those are the ones who you can depend on to tell you whether you've given a reliable, valid test. But whether it's whether you get that kind of feedback or not, the teacher is responsible for paying attention and understanding based upon the results of a quiz or even a major test, whether the students are actually progressing or not. That's a very important piece.
Yes. So how would the infusion of technology into classrooms impact the curriculum?
Technology is very important, simply because a student who is having a weakness, for instance, with subject-verb agreement, could take 100 items on a computer to help themselves, as opposed to having a teacher give them a handout with 15 or 20 items. The student can go themselves to any website, Khan Academy, whatever, and they can help themselves after being given the big picture of the subject-verb agreement topic from the beginning. Not only that, the teacher is able to quickly assess using technology a lot of times. That's also a very important feature. You can assess as individuals. You can assess the kids even as a group, as you're going through a particular testing or particular standard. You could test their knowledge of the standard using all kinds of features available through technology. But there are a lot of different pieces associated with technology that help us advance. If we were to have a one-to-one, even if you don't have a one-to-one initiative, technology is very important, because you can use a smart board, you can use a number of different devices to help the kids in terms of display of the knowledge of a standard.
So what would you describe as some of the greatest difficulties as a curriculum specialist? Y'all have had one in the past, and what do you think some of the greatest difficulties were?
Well, that's one person that needs to be split 6 or 7 different ways. I think every school should have an academic administrator. That means that person who has a finger on the pulse of everything happening in academics. a curriculum director cannot do it alone. Now, we know the principal is the instructional leader, but that comes second and third a lot of times to everything else that's going on in the school. So ideally, we need academic administrators in the schools. And of course, those people are not funded by the state budget. Therefore, it's very problematic, especially in school systems that are struggling with state assessment and state accountability. I think the state is obligated, once they realize that there are problems associated with the curriculum or problems associated with results on state accountability. I think there's an obligation that the state has to put some pieces in place that we know that are research-based, that speaks to the idea that this is how you get improvement in these particular areas. And I mean, it's all about someone paying attention every step of the way and directing the curriculum in such a way that we can get improvement.
Okay, what do you view as some of the factors that interfere with achieving goals and objectives?
And I don't know what you mean by that, and I don't know what level you want me to answer
What they're
that.
talking, like when you're speaking with teachers in regards to, this teacher says, well, I'm having a problem getting my state scores up. The children,
So that's a good point. Normally, I use the idea that 15-20% of the kids are the ones that negatively skew the results on state accountability. It may be higher depending on where you are, but those students skew the results because they lack the motivation to complete the test with enthusiasm. That means they don't care anything about testing. Anyone who has had to sit down and take a test for an hour and a half, or 2 hours understands the anxiety, the rigors of having to test that long. I don't know anyone who likes taking a test, but imagine someone who is straddling the fence between knowing and not knowing the items on that test, not knowing the information that's being tested. So you can see how they can quickly be turned off. Now, why are they turned off? They're turned off a lot of times because some students miss 15-20 days in a semester. And if you miss 15-20 days in a semester, well, of course you're not going to know fractions because you missed a lot of the lectures, a lot of the teaching associated with that particular standard. And not only that, some students get sick, especially as we approach winter. You have flu, you have a lot of different things that go on. No one takes these matters into account, but we have to, and we have to find a way to, when the child is not in the classroom, we have to find a way to extend the classroom to the home. That's where technology, again, comes to the forefront. If we can find a way to allow the child to continue learning while at home recovering from the flu, that could make a huge difference. But the biggest problem is the issue with attendance and the sense of belonging. Discipline takes children out of the classroom a lot. So when those kinds of things happen, it interferes in a way that it's difficult for teachers and administrators to control.
Well, thank you, Mr. Douthitt, for your time today, and I know you're a busy man, so I appreciate you.
Well, thank you.